Welcome to the Social Media Show with Philip Calvert. Social media news, views and tips to help you win more customers and increase sales.
Well, hello and a massive welcome to the Social Media Warriors podcast with me, Philip Calvert. I'm particularly excited that you're joining me today because this is episode 1. And if you're a big fan of social media, this show is for you. It's especially for you if you're using social media to market and promote yourself online and to attract new clients. If that's you, then you, my friend, are a social media warrior. Why warrior? Because you know more than anybody just how hard it can be to really make social media work for your business. Many entrepreneurs and small and medium business size owners often give the impression that social media is some kind of panacea for success online, and you know it just doesn't always work out like that. But that said, social media warriors know that the likes of Twitter, Snapchat, Facebook and LinkedIn give us opportunities like never before. We live in amazing times. But to make it work, we need proven tips, proven techniques and proven strategies to help us out. So over the coming weeks, I'm going to be interviewing social media warriors who have mastered their craft. These will include experts who do social media for a living. They'll include entrepreneurs and professionals who've successfully made social media work in their businesses. And from time to time, I'm going to interview people who've found social media to be a complete and utter waste of their time and effort. I'm going to be inviting them onto the show too, and we'll be giving them ideas that are tried and tested, which they can take away and put in place in their business. And then we'll catch up with them later. And maybe you'd like to be one of them on our show. So let's get straight to it and talk to our very first social media warrior, who is none other than a Snapchat guru, Mr. Rob Lee. Now, I first met Rob in the departure lounge at Heathrow Airport a few months ago now, when we were both on our way to speak at the International Conference on Tourism Technology in India. It was a fantastic event where tourism professionals from all over India met up in Kerala, which is down the south, and they were really meeting up to get under the skin of how technology can help their tourism businesses. This was my third time speaking at tourism conferences in India, and the first couple of times social media really only had a small part of the agenda, but this time it pretty well dominated the entire conference program, so there were several social media experts flying in from around the globe. Now, I guess if you're going to have a conference almost entirely dedicated to social media, you're going to need someone who knows a thing or two about Snapchat. Now, I get the principle behind Snapchat. It's just not a tool that really works for me, though. And that's probably because I don't really understand it, or I've not really put in enough effort to find out about it. My kids use it all the time, and yeah, I've been subjected to having crazy pictures of me taken and then plastered all over the internet. What I've also noticed, though, is that I often hear my kids talking about friends at school who did something or other on their story today. You know, they never mention Snapchat by name, but we know instinctively that when they talk about stories, they're talking about Snapchat, you know, even though you can get and post stories on other platforms today. So I'm really excited to have Rob with us today, who is the man when it comes to using Snapchat in business. And hopefully he can give us some great insights into how to make the most of it. A warm welcome to you, Rob. How are you today?
Hi, Phil. Absolutely delighted to be joining you. And I'm doing fantastic on this Saturday afternoon. So I was about to say morning, afternoon.
Whereabouts are you in the UK?
I'm based in Essex, in Chelmsford. So, but all of my work's pretty much in London. So it's pretty easy to just jump on the train and head into East London, where I do most of my work.
Oh, fantastic. So, you know, how did you find India, you know, as a place, the people, the opportunities? What was it like for you?
Oh, it was a complete leap into the unknown for me. I'd never had it on my bucket list to go. It was maybe a secondary or tertiary destination, but it's something I wanted to do, but it wasn't urgent. And then the offer came out of the blue to, you know, go and talk at this conference. And I deliberately didn't do a lot of research because I really wanted it to be a surprise. I wanted to just throw myself into it and absorb it. And a number of things I found. First of all, the conference itself was phenomenal. Everybody was so energetic, so willing to listen to you, regardless of whether their business was going to be using what you were specifically talking about or not. But also there was the other speakers as well. I mean, obviously we met in, as you said, in the departure lounge. We spent a lot of time talking on the plane with Nikki as well, Nikki Creel. And we spent a lot of time obviously eating, having drinks afterwards. And it was just great to absorb so many interesting perspectives and tips from other social media platforms, from other industries, from people who have just walked a different path to you. So I just got so much out of it. And really the cherry on top was the 6-day tour of Kerala, which was just the most stunningly beautiful place I've ever been to.
It is. I was really interested that, as an audience, the Indian business professionals who were there, I don't think I've ever, I've spoken to a lot of audiences around the world, and I don't think I've ever met a group that was just so interested in this whole area of social media. I think India has really woken up to the idea that tourism is just going to be big on the agenda for them. And with the internet and social media and the tools that they can use to raise their profile, I think they've just got such opportunity ahead. I think for many of them, it was trying to figure out, well, which is the best social media platform for them. I know, it's not necessarily right just to stick to one platform, but to think about a strategy that you need that's going to help fulfill your business goals. But clearly, any social media tool that could help people to get across images and pictures. And, Snapchat is about stories. And I think there were so many stories. When we did our tour, there were stories about everywhere we went, from the tea plantations to absolutely everywhere else. Everywhere had a story to tell. And I think many of the business professionals there, the hotel owners out there, began to realize, social is a tool that will really help us to raise our profile, to engage with their customers, and to tell great stories about the opportunities that people have got to come to India. So kind of before we get into Snapchat, after having sat through the 2-day conference in India, what would you say were the key takeaways, excuse the pun there, that the tourism professionals got from the conference when it comes to social media in general?
Well, what I saw a number of speakers do were get their phones out while they were speaking to demonstrate various apps, whether it's Facebook Live, whether it's Snapchat, whether it's Instagram. And the conversations I had, I think the penny was dropping for a lot of people that they didn't necessarily have to outsource all of their marketing and all of their content to agencies. They have in their pocket a mobile video editing tool. They have in their pocket a live streaming tool, even a podcasting tool. And when you start, all the tips that people were getting, they could actually take that and run with it themselves. And it just seemed to me like people were feeling almost free to actually engage in some of these platforms that maybe they're new to, but with a sense that actually I can make a personal connection with my audience, as opposed to, like I say, have it as a marketing campaign that's maybe is very high level, very polished, but comes across as very salesy. So that's really what I think that what I saw. Lots of people just really the eyes start to widen when they realise, actually, I've got a really powerful phone in my pocket. I can create some of this.
Yeah, and what's been fantastic, I think, is since being back in the UK, since we got back, I've noticed more and more of the businesses that we met, the hotel owners that we met, the people who had venues and destinations. One by one, they're all starting to get more and more visible. They seem to like Instagram a lot, and that isn't surprising. And some of them they're really on a mission. They're posting content out there several times a day.
Yeah, and I think we've had several talks about this, about why people may be waiting for the exact point to get something right. We need to be skilled up on these platforms before we actually start producing content so that it's all on brand. And I think the likes of Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook Live, what it does is it gives people the impetus to actually get out there and start talking to your audience, to people who don't expect it to be perfect. And you don't have to wait to be a master practitioner of Instagram stories to put 2, 3, 4 images up that tell a cohesive, understandable narrative and maybe a call to action at the end. Anybody could do that. It might not be brilliant, but the most important thing is making a start on it.
Yeah, I think you're bang on there. I work in a couple of industries where, they say, oh, yeah, we need to get this up. We're going to start a Facebook group, or we're going to start a Facebook page. We're just getting our Twitter account ready. I just need to get the artwork right. We've got to cross a few T's and dot some I's. And I'm thinking, just get on with it, guys. You put the half finished product out there and let your community help you to finish it. They'll give you great feedback about, I don't like that picture, I don't like that cover photo. They can help you, and I think this is the beauty of social media. It is a two-way thing. It's fantastic. So I had a great time in India, and I know you did too, and the others we were with. But to me, the most satisfying thing has been seeing the hotel owners really getting stuck into it and pushing content out there, and people are engaging with it. It's starting to achieve what they hoped it would do. People are responding to a picture, great photo, I had great memories there, and conversations start, which I think is so important.
Just one further point on that, actually, Phil. I've also seen those accounts engaging with other people. And I think that's the most important point, is realizing that these platforms, it's not all one-way communication. You have the opportunity to actually engage and build bridges with your audience. And certainly the one I'm seeing is the Munnar County Resort, regularly engaging with content that its audience is actually putting out there as well. Really, really pleasing to see.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So tell us, how did you get into Snapchat? What was it that grabbed your attention that made you think, I need to be spending some proper time with this?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned this story at the conference we were at, and it's kind of one that I go back to just to show my journey. I mean, I'm in my late 40s now, and sorry, mid 40s. Let me specify, and. And I've always looked at Snapchat as being something frivolous, something that just has no value. And I've tried to download it a couple of times, just could not understand it at all, couldn't get past the first screen. But I've been doing digital marketing for about 5 years now. And a couple of years ago, I got approached by an events company. And they said they had an interesting, should we say, problem that they wanted my take on. And that's that they had 10,000 people on their Facebook page. When they put event listings up, people under the age of 30 don't seem to engage with with that event listing as often as people over the age of 30. So they might turn up on the day, but they don't actually say they're going. They don't like the pictures. They don't comment on the pictures. And they didn't really know why. So I did a bit of old-fashioned market research, went to some of the events, talked to a lot of the young people, and they said, well, the reason we don't go on Facebook as often is because if we put a picture up from a night out or just a meal or a holiday, one of the first people that we'll get commenting on the pictures is our parents, or if we're really unlucky, our grandparents, in front of all of our friends, usually saying something quite embarrassing. So what they do is they gravitate more towards social media platforms that they can control the social media circle of. Certainly, Instagram still has a high entry level barrier for many older people, but Snapchat is completely indecipherable. And so for them, it's about being themselves on a platform that they know that their peer group are on, but not their parents and their grandparents.
Okay.
So so 2 years ago, like I say, that's how I kind of got the idea. I really need to delve in and get an understanding of how this could work from a business perspective. And right, it's been an interesting journey since then.
So there'll be people listening to the show who are probably a little bit like me. They kind of flirted with Snapchat, but still kind of trying to figure out other ways that it could benefit them and their business. To me, when I look at Snapchat, there's just so much you can do with it. It's almost like the ultimate social media tool. So much that you can do with it. So much you can play around with it, and you can have fun with it. You can tell stories with it. It seems to do everything. If I was I don't know, a small consultancy, one-person consultancy business, and maybe I was focusing on professional services, maybe I was trying to win business from accountants. It might be quite a challenge. I don't know, or for anywhere. What would you say were the key benefits of using Snapchat for business?
Well, let me kind of just twist that slightly and say use the story format, because Snapchat is not necessarily right for everyone. There's two platforms that are using the story format to great effect, and that's Snapchat and also Instagram. Story format is across multiple platforms as well. It's also across Facebook Messenger, Facebook, WhatsApp, Skype. However, those aren't really getting any traction. It's Instagram and Snapchat are the two big ones. So I wouldn't necessarily be wedded to you have to be on Snapchat, but the story format I think is fantastic for any business if you want to actually get a bit more of an in-depth or have your audience have a bit more of an in-depth knowledge of what you do.
Okay.
So
just to interrupt you there, and so what is the point of the stories disappearing? Is that just a differentiator?
Well, it does two things. First of all, it means that you, as the content provider, you need to create a new story every single day. And again, that's quite problematic for a lot of people if they're unused to creating content. But the important thing is when it comes to the audience, if you've got an engaged audience and they love your content, but they don't check in for a day, it means that they're going to miss out on something. So this is the reason why, for instance, the average Snapchatter will check the app 18 times a day. There's that compulsion to keep checking in. Is there an update to the story? And there's little tips that you can use to actually get more traction on your story by teasing your content out over the course of a day rather than just put it all in one shot. So like I say, I think as well, if you think of Snapchat stories almost like radio, we were having a chat about radio the other day. And radio is still very powerful medium, but it's in the moment, and then it's gone. There's something else in the next hour, and that's kind of what Snapchat is. It's in the moment, it's powerful, people pay attention to it, and then tomorrow there's a new story. So it's always moving on.
Okay, that's interesting. In some respects, it feels to me what you're saying. It's a bit like the modern version of blogging. Blog experts that I've spoken to over the years, and I mean people who kind of look at this in depth, have kind of said, in an ideal world, you need to be blogging every day. Once a month, okay. Once a week, good. Once a day really helps to get this idea across that people can expect something new from you every day. And I guess with Snapchat, when you have to write a blog, great idea, great for SEO, great for enhancing the perception of your expertise. But my goodness, blogging can actually be quite hard work. It can be time consuming in terms of research, writing, whereas Snapchat, it can be done on the hoof, I guess.
Yeah, there's a mixture of different types of content that you can actually do with Snapchat and Instagram stories. And, because you've asked before about a professional consultancy business. And the best example that I've got that I show across a number of different industries is NASDAQ. Okay. Now, NASDAQ stories are generally, hey, look who's ringing the opening bell, or look who's ringing the closing bell. We'll give a shout out to those people. But they did something really interesting that started last year, and they do it sporadically now. They do something called Market School. So what they've done is they said once a week we will highlight one area of the market, one area of our industry, and our experts, our stock traders, will teach you, the man on the street, the people who are following us, what that means to you in very, very simple terms. So what they do is they break it down into 4, 5, 6, 7 snaps. And within 30 seconds, you've learned a key thing about the markets. Now, the application I've used for that has been, because I do a workshop based around property developers called Property Go Live, and we teach property developers how to use these platforms to raise their profile. So a little bit of time with them, and what we do is we say, well, you could be you're an expert in your field. Let's position you as such. So what could you actually teach people that want to follow you? And what we start doing is breaking down short little lessons that they can actually film.
So like
and
educational pieces. Yeah, that's
exactly.
really interesting.
Yeah, so what it's doing is establishing themselves as the number one expert in their field. And when you start thinking through how many lessons you could actually create, it comes to 20, 30, 40. All of a sudden, you've got months worth of content.
That sounds a great idea. Can you give us any other really quick tips that ways that the businesses could use Snapchat other than that educational way? I think that's a brilliant idea.
Yeah, I think giving people how-tos, and I suppose this is the interesting one. I did a recruitment workshop yesterday, and almost everybody in the room was scared to be in front of the camera. So what we did was we said, well, a story format is video or images. So what we did was we created stories literally just with still images.
Yeah.
And this is a good kind of starting way to get used to the story format. When you on Snapchat, when you upload an image to your story, you can have it viewable for anywhere from 1 to 10 seconds. So you've got to think through the narrative of 10 seconds be quite long. But nevertheless, if you're looking to, for instance, yesterday they were talking about a recruitment event they were going to. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, here's where we're going to be. We're going to walk you through so you can find our stand. Here's some of the giveaways. And then a call to action. If you can't make it, here's where we're going to be next.
Okay,
So
that's
in
interesting.
doing it in stills, it just meant that people got comfortable more with the story format rather than the fear of I've got to be right on camera.
Yeah, interesting. And does it take long to build up a following? Are there any particular tips you've got on once you start using Snapchat on how to build a following?
There's no kind of magic pill with either Snapchat or Instagram. It is about having your strategy up front and then really kind of working through and building the quality and shouting about it. But a few kind of quick wins, are a tip from Burberry, for instance, is what they do is they've got really big stories out. They'll give the first 10 seconds and they'll put it out on their Twitter, Facebook, etc. and say, we're at this event, London Fashion Weekend. This is what our Snapchat audience are viewing. And all the audience on Facebook and Twitter will see the first 10 seconds. But if they want to see the whole story, they have to go to Snapchat.
I get you. That's really clever. And what about the future for Snapchat? Just like Twitter, they're quite often in the news. I did see there's a fascinating. There was like an art installation recently that's an augmented reality. Yeah, that was fascinating.
Yeah, so they tapped Jeff Koons, the artist, to I don't know if it's an established piece of work or he's created it specifically for Snapchat, but it's like an inflatable dog. Yeah. And you can have that as an augmented reality pop-up that comes into your screen, very much like Pokemon Go, which I'm sure lots of people are familiar with. That's what I thought of.
Yeah, when I saw that, I thought this is just like Pokemon.
Exactly. Well, they introduced a couple of weeks ago, they introduced the Bitmoji version of those. So you could have a cartoon version of yourself available in your Snapchat screen doing various things like dances or whatever it is you want to do. So yeah, the Jeff Koons thing is, I think it's Hyde Park. It's available for the next few weeks. So I'm looking to go maybe next weekend to try and go down and see where this is. But in terms of where it's going with Snapchat, again, think through what the business opportunities are. I mean, we've already got things like geofilters, which is a visual overlay in a specific area where you can get your brand message out. But with augmented reality, imagine walking through a store, getting your Snapchat phone up, and then seeing special offers just within the Snapchat app.
Right.
Pop-ups coming, just appearing as you're walking through. That's what I think's coming. It's really, really exciting to view because with all of this, it's all fun and games, but I think we're more interested in the business applications for this. And when I talk to people like property developers, straight away they get things like geofilters because they have a fixed location. They can get an understanding of how they can not necessarily interrupt, but add value to people's Snapchat experience while also doing marketing for themselves.
It's fascinating, isn't it? There was a time where we wanted to go shopping. We'd go to a supermarket, a mall somewhere. You go in the shop, and you had a look round. Somebody might have asked you a question, can I help you today? And you either did or didn't want help. You either did or you didn't buy something. Today, the shopping experience, the retail experience is really changing. The number of people now who go into a store and then they interact with the brand through Twitter or social media while they're in the store. You know, in the old days, we might have gone up to the manager and asked a question. Today, we'll go into a store, and I've done it myself, and then ask the brand a question via Twitter. I'm in your shop in Guildford or wherever, and I'm looking at XYZ. Tell me about this, that, and the other. It's fascinating. So I guess with tools like Snapchat, there's going to be so much more interaction between the store and the brand and the customer as they move around. It's very exciting.
Yeah, and they're doing things at the moment where they have what they call their Snap code. So again, you can kind of touch this in the app, and then you get access to something. Uber have done this recently. If you get into an Uber car, into an Uber cab, you get access to an Uber geofilter that follows you through the length of your journey. So you can snap yourself, and then the Uber geofilter will say, "I'm on my way."
That's really interesting. I mean, the guys at Snapchat strike me as pretty creative. And I know all sorts of copying seems to be going on but in between the different social media platforms. But Snapchat, it does seem to be quite creative. And for me, it feels like there's a good future for them. Is that how your thinking is?
Yeah, there's. I mean, I've been reading stories for the last couple of years about Snapchat is on its way out because it hasn't got the numbers. But what it has got is it's got a very, very loyal, a young base who still won't go on Facebook and sometimes not even Instagram. Yeah. And so that's really what I'm focused on is the demographic. And when you see the things like the wearables, the spectacles, version 2 apparently is coming out soon. When you apparently they bought a drone company. All of these things, you realize they're not just thinking, how can I tweak the app? How can I just tweak the experience? They're looking at taking it a stage further. How can I make it not just slightly more interesting? How can I make it spectacular?
Fantastic. Great stuff. Now, during these shows, Rob, we're going to also have a look at other news that's happening in the world of social media. And while I've got you, I'd love to quickly pick your brains, if that's okay. I guess one of the biggest news kind of this week on social media is Twitter. And they're looking at increasing the number of characters to 280. Certainly made me yawn when I heard it. But there was a really interesting little exchange of tweets a few days ago between someone who was saying that the Twitter team are obsessed and concerned about tweaks to the platform, when really they should be focusing on, arguably much bigger issues such as harassment and abuse on Twitter. What's your take on Twitter, where they're going? Are they sustainable? What's the future for them, do you think?
I think you literally just summed up what I was thinking of as the answer, which is this is absolutely just a tweak that's not actually really going to add value to the experience of being on Twitter. When I think about Twitter, I think about the amount of the character limit. That's really what kind of made it very special. You really had to change your thinking as to how you're going to communicate. And just by adding that extra amount, I'm just not feeling it. I'm not feeling it as a something of value. And what you just said about the harassment, I think you're absolutely right. When you actually have, literally Nazis on the Twitter platform harassing people with free will, I think that seems to me like a bigger issue to tackle to improve the user experience rather than increasing the character limit.
Yeah, I think investors would really like to see a big, bold move. I don't know what that is, but I think it's a common criticism across most social media platforms, their apparent inability to really deal with abuse and harassment and hate videos and so on and so forth. It's certainly a big problem, certainly symptomatic of the times we live in. But the 280 character thing, it just fascinates me, this, because I can see, here we go, a couple of years down the line, but the people are thinking, well, why don't we double it again? And before we know it, we're doing email in public. And the great thing about Twitter when it first appeared was, to me, it felt like the first genuinely new communication tool that we had. After email, this ability to search for stuff, to follow stuff through hashtags, instant communication, private messages. I thought this was just absolutely fantastic. But I've got to tell you, I don't know if you've ever seen it. There was, and I gather it's coming back. I can't be 100%. There was an app called Natter, Natter, which was basically just 3 words and a hashtag. I think that's all you were allowed. You were allowed 3 words. Yeah. And I tell you, this was it was fantastic. The fact that you were forced to communicate and say whatever it is you wanted to say in just 3 words and a hashtag added a really creative element and made it very funny. It was entertaining. There was a thriving community. Like all small social media platforms, I think they needed more investment, but I believe they are coming back. So please look out for that one in due course. But it was called Natter. Absolutely superb. So, Rob, before we leave you today, I'd love it if you could just give us some recommendations. We're asking all our guests for a recommendation for a book that's really caught your attention, an app, and maybe a piece of music. So, what would you say your recommendation for a great book to be reading at the moment is?
Actually, can I have 2? Sorry to be cheeky.
Go on then. This is the first.
Because I literally just finished 2 over the last few days. The first is Never Split the Difference, Negotiate as if your life depended on it, by a guy called Chris DeVos, who is used to be a hostage negotiation expert for the FBI. Fascinating, because I'm not a great negotiator. It doesn't come that naturally to me. And then just a complete change of pace. If anyone's seen the TV show The Expanse, I've just finished the first book of that, which is Leviathan Wakes. And if you like space opera, I'm a very big science fiction person. It's just a brilliant book, end to end, great read.
Fantastic. Well, we'll put those in the show notes for later, so people can check those out themselves. And what about an app that you're loving at the moment?
Yeah, the one I'm really relying on at the moment is something called Habit Bull. So I do something called Miracle Morning, which is you try to get up insanely early, and then you go through a number of habits. Like things like reading, exercising, just to get your day started. And what this is doing, it just allows me to track that progress. I've got a certain exercise routine I'm going through at the moment, and it's a real compulsion to keep that chain going, to keep, yes, I'm exercising every day, or whichever days I've decided. So Habit Ball, highly recommended.
Okay, thank you. We'll look out for that one. And finally, a piece of music, CD, vinyl, download, however you consume your tunes. What would you be recommending at the moment?
Yep, I came across a band while watching the new Twin Peaks show, which, let's not even get into that. But there was a band there that, as a threesome, they're like a synth pop group called Au Revoir Simone. And they're amazing, just really dreamy type quality to their music. But their album, The Bird of Music, I'd highly recommend.
Okay, that sounds fantastic. And how can people contact you, Rob, if they wanted to talk to you further, maybe hire you to speak at an event or use your training skills? Where could they find you?
Sure. So I'm Rob Lee RL on Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. If you're interested in more about the property workshop, go to propertygolive.co.uk. The recruitment workshop is millennialrecruiting.co.uk. And then following on from the India trip, I have a book coming out, hopefully by the time that this goes live, but basically Snapchat for tourism. So the website for that is snaptourism.co.uk.
I've read it, and I think it's a must. It's a must read. Some really great stuff in there, and it's not one of these quick and short sort of ebook type things. There's plenty of great content in there, which I really can recommend. Rob, you've been an absolute star today. Thank you so much for joining us on this very first episode of the Warriors podcast. It really is very much appreciated. That's about it for today's show. I really appreciate everybody listening. Once again, thanks to Rob. Really great that you've been able to join us. Most importantly, I'd love you to join all of us, including you, Rob, our social media warrior community. Now, this is a private membership group on Facebook where you'll be able to meet and network with other listeners, ask questions, share ideas, help and support each other. You know, that's the real power of social media, using it for community. There's a waiting list to join. Please do join the waiting list. You just need to go to www.philipcalvert.com/social media warriors, and I'll put a link in the show notes as well. Thanks again, Rob, and thanks to everybody for listening, and see you next time.
You've been listening to The Social Media Show with Philip Calvert. For more great tips and resources, follow Philip on Twitter @PhilipCalvert. And if you'd like to book Philip to speak at and rock your conference or event, contact him by email, philip@philipcalvert.com. Thanks for listening.